welcome back to another episode of Courts This Week, your go-to source for the latest legal updates presented by Live Law. I'm your host, Ostika Das. I'm an advocate practicing in Delhi, and I'm here to take you through and break down the most significant updates from the week. From the corridors of the Supreme Court to local judicial proceedings, I'll be providing you with clear and concise summaries that keep you informed and ahead of the curve. But remember, for a more in-depth understanding, do visit LiveLaw's website at www.livelaw.in. So let's get started. In a significant development from this week, the Supreme Court has directed the Speaker of the Telangana Legislative Assembly to decide within 3 months on disqualification petitions filed against 10 Bharat Rashtra Samiti MLAs who defected to the Congress party. The petitions filed by BRS MLAs Kunapandu Vivekanand and Kaushik Reddy and BJP MLA A. Maheshwar Reddy alleged that the Speaker's inaction for more than 7 months was encouraging more defections. Earlier, a single judge bench of the Telangana High Court had ordered the Speaker to fix the schedule within 4 weeks, but this was overturned by a division bench which held that the Speaker could act within, and I quote, a reasonable time. A bench of Chief Justice B.R. Gavai and Justice A.G. Masih has now observed that indefinite delays defeat the very purpose of the 10th schedule's anti-defection law and warned against a repeat of the Operation Successful but Patient Dead scenario, where defecting MLAs continue to hold office until their term ends. The court also observed that the Speaker, when acting as a tribunal, is not immune from judicial scrutiny. It went further, urging Parliament to reconsider whether politically appointed speakers should continue to decide disqualification cases, pointing to repeated instances of deliberate delay to benefit defectors. The Supreme Court this week recalled its controversial 2nd May ruling that had rejected JSW Steel's Rs 19,700 crore resolution plan for Bhushan Power and Steel Limited and ordered the company's liquidation. A bench of Chief Justice B.R. Gavai and Justice Satish Chandra Sharma observed that the earlier verdict appeared contrary to settled insolvency law principles and noted that incorrect facts and arguments not raised during hearings were considered. The court said that this was a fit case for review, stressing that the livelihood of over 25,000 workers and the 20,000 crore rupees already invested by JSW could not be ignored. CJI Gavai pointed out that the commercial wisdom of the Committee of Creditors, which had approved the plan and whose decision had been upheld by both NCLT and NCLAT, should not have been lightly interfered with. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta and Senior Advocate Neeraj Kishan Kaul, appearing for JSW and its creditors, argued that rejecting an already implemented resolution plan sends a dangerous signal to investors and undermines the insolvency and bankruptcy code. They emphasized that minor timeline breaches could not justify liquidation, especially when the company has been successfully revived. However, Senior Advocate Dhruv Mehta, representing the former BPSL promoters, opposed the review. Now, with all arguments reopened, the court will hear the matter afresh next Thursday, effectively putting on hold the liquidation proceedings initiated under its earlier ruling. The Supreme Court has reserved judgment in the high-profile case of Justice Yashwant Verma, an Allahabad High Court judge, challenging an in-house inquiry report that found him guilty of misconduct after large sums of cash were discovered at his official residence at a time when he was serving as a judge of the Delhi High Court. The cash was unearthed following a fire incident on 14th March 2025, prompting the then Chief Justice of India Sanjeev Khanna to form a 3-judges committee which, after examining over 50 witnesses, concluded that Justice Verma and his family controlled the premises and failed to explain the cash. The Chief Justice of India then forwarded the report to the President and Prime Minister with a recommendation for his removal after Justice Verma refused to resign. Justice Verma now contends that such in-house procedures cannot trigger removal, which only Parliament can undertake under Article 124(4). Senior Advocate Kapil Sibal, appearing for him, argued that the Judges Inquiry Act exclusively governs judicial removal, making the Chief Justice of India's recommendation invalid. A bench of Justices Dipankar Datta and A.G. Masih questioned why Justice Verma participated in the inquiry if he believed it unconstitutional and emphasized that in-house procedures are legally recognized under precedents like K. Veeraswamy and Ravi Chandran Iyer. The bench observed that if evidence indicates misconduct, the CJI is duty-bound to forward it, though the power to remove rests solely with Parliament. The Supreme Court this week addressed petitions challenging Bihar's special intensive revision of electoral rolls amid concerns that 65 lakh voters may be excluded from the draft roll that was published on 1st August. Petitioners, including the Association for Democratic Reforms and Rashtriya Janata Dal MP Manoj Jha, argued that the exclusions were based on unverified assumptions that voters had died or relocated permanently. A bench of Justices Surya Kant and Joy Malla Bagchi assured that any mass exclusion would prompt judicial intervention, observing that even proof of, say, 15 wrongfully excluded living voters could warrant relief. The court directed the Election Commission to factor in Aadhaar and voter IDs, noting their presumption of accuracy, and highlighted that the focus should be on mass inclusion, not on mass exclusion. The Election Commission, represented by senior advocate Rakesh Dwivedi, defended the process and noted that objections and corrections would be allowed after the draft list. The Supreme Court refused to stay publication of the draft, calling it preliminary, but fixed the case for detailed hearing on 12th and 13th of August to determine whether the process complied with law and constitutional guarantees. The Supreme Court this week took suo motu cognizance of a Times of India report which claimed that there were hundreds of daily stray dog attacks in Delhi and its outskirts, many resulting in rabies infections affecting infants, children and the elderly. A bench of Justices J.B. Pardiwala and R. Mahadevan registered a suo motu writ petition based on this article and placed the matter before the Chief Justice for further orders, terming the situation alarming and disturbing. Meanwhile, the Kerala High Court stayed the state's controversial move to euthanize stray dogs under Rule 8 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Animal Husbandry Practices and Procedures Rules 2023. Justice C.S. Dias observed that such euthanasia can only be allowed in limited cases if certified by a veterinarian as mortally injured or posing a public health risk, and only through due process. The court emphasized the need to balance public safety with humane treatment of animals, citing Ajayan MR versus State of Kerala and the Supreme Court's ruling Animal Welfare Board of India versus People for Elimination of Stray Troubles rulings. Officials have been directed to submit reports on dog bite incidents, compensation schemes, and criminal cases related to animal attacks. Now all eyes turn to the Supreme Court as it takes up this delicate issue of human-animal conflict. Speaking for myself and surely many others, there is hope that the court will chart a balanced and compassionate way forward, one that protects human life while respecting animal welfare. The Supreme Court this week granted relief to Samajwadi Party leader Azam Khan and his son Abdullah Azam Khan by staying two separate trials pending against them over alleged forgery of documents for obtaining a PAN card and a passport. These cases date back to 2019 when it was alleged that Abdullah Azam Khan, in conspiracy with his father, forged documents showing different dates of birth to obtain a duplicate PAN card and passport. The first case involves a PAN card with March 19, 1990 as his date of birth, which differed from his school records reflecting January 1, 1993. In the second, the passport allegedly reflected September 30, 1990 as his date of birth. Last month, the Allahabad High Court had refused to quash the proceedings, holding that the offences were distinct from his previous conviction in a fake birth certificate case, and therefore the principle of double jeopardy did not apply. A bench of Justices M.M. Sundaresh and N.K. Singh has issued notice to the Uttar Pradesh government and stayed the High Court's orders, halting the trials for now. This matter will be heard in detail in the coming weeks. The Supreme Court this week dismissed 14 appeals filed by the CBI and victims' families, upholding the Allahabad High Court judgment acquitting Surinder Kohli and Muninder Singh Pandher in multiple cases related to the infamous 2005-2006 Nithari killings. The High Court had earlier overturned their convictions and death sentences, citing lack of evidence and failure to investigate alternate theories, including organ trade. A bench of Chief Justice B.R. Gawai and Justices Satish Chandra Sharma and K. Vinod Chandran has praised the High Court for delivering its verdict despite tremendous media pressure, remarking that the trial court appeared to have been influenced by a media trial. While Pandher now stands acquitted in all cases, Kohli remains in jail, serving a life sentence in another murder case where his conviction had already been upheld by the Supreme Court in 2011. The bench observed that the site where skeletal remains were recovered was not exclusively accessible to the accused, weakening the prosecution's case. The Nithari killings had shocked the country after body parts of 19 children and women were found behind Pandher's Noida residence, allegedly dismembered by Kohli, who worked as his domestic help. A Bengaluru special court this week convicted Janata Dal secular leader and former member of parliament Prajwal Revana in one of 3 rape cases filed against him. This case stems from a complaint by a domestic worker at the Revana family farmhouse who alleged repeated sexual assaults since 2021, which were filmed and used to blackmail her. The court, presided over by Additional Sessions Judge Santosh Gajanan Bhatt, held him guilty under provisions related to rape by a person in position of dominance, repeated rape, criminal intimidation and voyeurism, along with violations of the Information Technology Act. Rawana, who is already in judicial custody, was arrested on 30th May last year, immediately after returning from Germany, following the surfacing of multiple explicit videos allegedly involving him. His trial was one of the 3 ongoing cases being investigated by a special investigation team. The sentence is expected to be pronounced in the coming days, marking a significant development in a case that has triggered political controversy in Karnataka and has raised serious questions about power, accountability, and sexual violence. 17 years after the 2008 Malegaon bomb blast that killed 6 and injured over 100, a Mumbai special NIA court has acquitted all 7 accused, including BJP MP Pragya Singh Thakur and Lieutenant Colonel Prasad Purohit. Special Judge A.K. Lahoti ruled that the prosecution failed to establish either ownership or conscious possession of the LML Freedom motorcycle allegedly used to plant the bomb, which the anti-terrorism squad had attributed to Thakur. The court observed that she had taken sannyas and renounced material life 2 years before the incident, and witness testimony failed to link her to the vehicle at the time of the blast. The judgment also rejected ATS and NIA claims that the explosive was planted beneath the motorcycle seat, noting the absence of scientific testing and the likelihood that the bomb had been externally placed. Furthermore, the court found inconsistencies in the case diaries and questioned the reliability of forensic evidence, calling it guesswork. This case had witnessed several controversies, including allegations of political interference and prosecutorial misconduct. With this ruling, one of India's most high-profile terror trials ends in complete acquittal. However, it has triggered sharp political reactions, with BJP leaders celebrating it, while opposition parties and leaders like Asaduddin Owaisi have condemned it as a miscarriage of justice and called for accountability of investigative agencies. The controversy over the film Udaipur Files, Kanhaiya Lal Taylor murder intensified this week, with the Delhi High Court questioning the centre's authority to order additional cuts after the Central Board of Film Certification had already cleared the film. For context, last week the Supreme Court declined to stay the film's release and directed petitioners opposing it to approach the Delhi High Court, noting that the centre had already reviewed the CBFC certification and approved the film with 6 additional cuts, apart from the 55 cuts that had originally been recommended. During this week's hearing, Chief Justice D.K. Upadhyay observed that the centre appeared to have acted like an appellate authority, something expressly curtailed by the Cinematograph Amendment Act 2023, which narrowed the government's revisional powers. Senior advocate Menaka Guruswamy, appearing for Mohammad Javed, who is an accused in the Kanhaiya Lal murder case, argued that releasing the film could prejudice her client's fair trial, particularly with 160 witnesses still to be examined, and called the centre's intervention unconstitutional. The Additional Solicitor General, however, defended the government's move, saying that it followed recommendations from a high-level committee including officials from the Ministries of Home and External Affairs. The court, however, remained unconvinced, emphasizing that executive action must remain within the 4 corners of the statute. In response, the centre withdrew its earlier order and undertook to decide the pending revision petitions by 6th August, with producers directed to appear before it on 4th August. The film, originally scheduled for release on 11 June but delayed due to the certification row, is now set to hit theatres on 8th August, subject to outcome of the ongoing proceedings. A woman judicial officer in Madhya Pradesh has resigned, alleging harassment by a senior judicial officer who has now been appointed as a High Court judge. In a letter addressed to the Chief Justice of the Madhya Pradesh High Court, Aditi Sharma described her resignation as born of, and I quote, betrayal by the very same system I swore to serve. She alleged enduring unrelenting harassment for speaking up against a powerful senior and said that she had exhausted all institutional remedies, including complaints to the Registrar General, Chief Justice, Supreme Court, and even the President, but received only silence. Her letter condemned what she described as the judiciary's failure to uphold transparency and equality before law, remarking that instead of accountability, her harasser had been rewarded and elevated. Notably, earlier this year, the Supreme Court had set aside Sharma's termination from judicial service, holding it arbitrary and punitive. Her resignation has reignited debates over workplace harassment within the judiciary and the processes governing judicial appointments, which have often been criticized as opaque. And that's a wrap for this week's Legal News Roundup. I'm your host, Ostika Das, and it's been a pleasure bringing you this week's Legal News Roundup. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay tuned to Live Law. Thank you for watching.